The summer heat shimmered off the blacktop in a small southern town, where old cars and louder stories often crossed paths. On the edge of Main Street, a cherry-red 1967 Mustang sat broken down. It had popped open, steam rising like smoke signals into the air. Leaning against the driver's side door was a tall man in a tailored white shirt. Sleeves rolled up, his watch gleamed brighter than the sun, and his shoes looked like they had never touched dirt before. He was clearly out of place in this sleepy town. His name was William Carrington, millionaire, investor, and owner of more businesses than most people in the county had neighbors. Yet at that moment, he was just another man stranded with a car that refused to move. As he wiped sweat from his brow, a soft voice cut through the sticky air. "Need help, mister?" William turned, expecting some old mechanic or a passerby with greasy hands. Instead, a little girl stood there, no older than 12. She wore a faded yellow sundress, her braids tied with blue ribbons, and a backpack that looked nearly as heavy as she was. Her dark skin glistened in the sunlight, but her eyes, bright, curious, and confident, were what struck him most. He blinked. "I don't think you can help me, sweetheart. This is a serious problem." The girl tilted her head, stepping closer without hesitation. "That's a '67 Mustang, right? My uncle used to have one. They overheat if the radiator cap gets loose. Can I look?" William almost laughed. A millionaire, embarrassed, taking advice from a child? But something about her tone, so sure, so matter-of-fact, made him step aside. She leaned over the engine with surprising ease, her small fingers moving like she had done this before. William watched in silence, his expensive phone buzzing in his pocket, ignored for the first time in years. Within minutes, the steam slowed. The girl tightened the cap, checked a hose, and straightened. "Try it now." Skeptical, William slid into the leather seat and turned the key. The engine roared back to life, smooth and strong. He stared at her through the windshield, stunned. When he got out, he said, almost softly, "How did you?" But then he noticed something. On her tiny hand, as she brushed dust from her dress, a silver ring glimmered in the sunlight. Not the kind a child usually wore. This one looked old, valuable, almost out of place on her finger. And suddenly, William Carrington felt a chill that had nothing to do with the summer heat. William's sharp eyes stayed fixed on that silver ring. The way it glinted in the sunlight stirred something deep in him, a strange mixture of recognition and disbelief. He had seen a ring like that before, years ago, in a place and time he thought he had buried under layers of money and distance. The girl noticed the stare and quickly curled her fingers into a fist, slipping her hand behind her back. "It's just something my mama gave me," she said carefully, almost protective. William cleared his throat, trying to mask his curiosity. "That's quite a gift for a girl your age." Her chin lifted, stubborn and proud. "It's not just a gift. It means something." She hesitated, then added, "Mama says it keeps us safe." For a man who spent his life building empires with contracts, lawyers, and ruthless deals, the innocence of her words shook him. Safe? What kind of safety did a piece of jewelry provide? Unless it wasn't just jewelry. Before he could question her further, the girl slung her backpack over one shoulder. "Your car's fine now. I gotta get home before Mama worries." "Wait!" William called out. He reached into his wallet, pulling out a crisp $100 bill. "Take this. For helping me." She froze. Her dark eyes narrowed, not at the money, but at the assumption. "I don't want your money," she said firmly. "I just wanted to help." The millionaire stood stunned, the bill still fluttering in his hand. No one ever refused him. Employees, partners, even politicians bent over backwards for his approval. Yet here was a little girl in a faded dress, walking away from him like his wealth meant nothing. "Then at least tell me your name," he called, his voice softer now. She turned halfway, her braids swaying in the hot breeze. "Lena," she answered. "Lena," he repeated, as if the name itself carried weight. And then she was gone, disappearing down a side street lined with peeling paint houses and cracked sidewalks. William stood by his car, the Mustang purring steadily now, but his mind far from calm. That ring, her refusal of his money, the quiet strength in her voice. He slid back into the driver's seat, but instead of driving away, he sat still, gripping the wheel. For the first time in years, William Carrington felt unsettled. He had come to this town for business, but something told him fate had just handed him something far greater and far more complicated than a deal. As he finally pulled onto the road, one thought repeated in his mind. Who was Lena's mother, and why did that ring look so familiar? The Mustang's engine hummed smoothly as William drove down the narrow streets, but his thoughts were louder than the motor. He couldn't shake the image of Lena's hand, that silver ring catching the light. It wasn't just similar. It was identical to the one he had once given away. Years ago, before the boardrooms, before the headlines calling him a genius investor, William had been just a man in love. Her name was Mariah. She had been everything his wealthy family disapproved of. Poor, stubborn, and unafraid to challenge him. But he had loved her anyway. And when words weren't enough, he had slipped a ring on her finger. Not an engagement ring, but a family heirloom, a symbol of promises he had never truly kept. And then life happened. His father demanded he walk away. His career pulled him towards cities and power. Mariah had refused to follow, refused to live in a world where she would always be looked down on. Their parting had been painful, final, or so he thought. But if Lena's ring was the same one, William pressed the accelerator without realizing it, the Mustang speeding toward the business meeting he was already late for. But when he reached the hotel where his associates were waiting, he couldn't bring himself to park. Instead, he circled the block again and again, until finally he turned back toward the street where he'd last seen Lena. The houses grew smaller, rougher, more worn down. Children played with bent bicycles in front yards. Dogs barked behind sagging fences. And there, walking up the steps of a faded blue house, was Lena. He pulled over, watching as she disappeared inside. For a long time he just sat there, his heart thumping in a way no corporate deal had ever made it beat. Should he knock? Should he walk away and pretend this never happened? As he debated, the front door creaked open again. A woman stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked older, wearier than the Mariah he remembered, but her eyes, sharp, unyielding, familiar, stole his breath away. Mariah. William gripped the steering wheel, so tightly his knuckles whitened. She hadn't vanished from his past. She had been here all along. And that little girl, Lena, could it be? His pulse raced as Mariah looked up, her gaze scanning the street. For a moment, their eyes met. Recognition flickered, then hardened into something colder. She turned, as if shielding the doorway behind her. William Carrington, who could negotiate billion-dollar mergers without flinching, suddenly found himself terrified. For a long moment, William couldn't move. He sat in his car, hands trembling on the wheel, staring at the woman he once thought he'd never see again. Mariah stood stiffly on the porch, her eyes locked on him, a mixture of disbelief and guarded anger. The towel slipped from her hands, falling to the wooden boards with a soft thud. He finally forced himself out of the Mustang. The slam of the door seemed to echo too loudly in the quiet street. He took a cautious step toward her house, heart pounding. "Mariah," he whispered, though the word fell foreign after all these years. Her jaw tightened. "You shouldn't be here, William." The sound of his name on her lips sent a shiver through him. He hadn't realized how much he missed it. I didn't know you were still here, or that you had," he hesitated, struggling to form the words, "that you had a daughter." Mariah's eyes flicked toward the doorway, where a small figure lingered just inside. Lena peeked out, confusion and curiosity written across her face. Mariah quickly moved, blocking the child's view. "She's none of your concern," she said firmly. But William couldn't hold back. "That ring on her finger, it's mine, the one I gave you." His voice cracked, his control slipping. "Mariah, is she?" Mariah's silence was louder than any answer, her lips pressed into a thin line, her arms folding across her chest. The truth hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. William staggered back a step. His world, built on numbers, strategies, and control, suddenly felt like quicksand beneath his feet. He stared at the house, at the shadow of Lena in the doorway, and the realization hit him with the force of a freight train. "She's my daughter," he breathed. Mariah's eyes glistened, but she didn't confirm it. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke volumes. The air between them burned with years of unspoken words. William wanted to reach out, to demand answers, to beg for forgiveness, but Mariah's stare froze him in place. "You had your chance," she said finally, her voice low and trembling, "and you chose a different life." She turned toward the door, her back to him. "Don't come here again, William. For her sake. For mine." The door closed with a sharp click, leaving him standing alone on the cracked sidewalk. For the first time in decades, William Carrington, the man who had everything, felt utterly powerless. That night, William sat in his luxury hotel suite, staring out at the glowing skyline of the city beyond. The glass of untouched whiskey in his hand trembled slightly, his reflection in the window looking older, lonelier than he remembered. All day, numbers and board meetings had tried to pull him back into his old rhythm, but every time he blinked, he saw Lena's face and the ring glimmering on her small hand. He had built an empire, yet he felt hollow. What was wealth worth if a piece of his heart had been walking around in this world without him knowing? Unable to sit still, William reached for his phone. He scrolled to his assistant's number, then hesitated. What was he going to say? Cancel my life so I can chase ghosts from my past? He sighed and tossed the phone aside. This wasn't a business deal. He couldn't buy his way through it. The next morning, against every instinct screaming at him to leave it alone, he drove back to the neighborhood. Children played in the yards again, and the blue house stood as unassuming as before. He parked down the street, unsure if he was brave or foolish. As fate would have it, Lena came skipping out the front door with her backpack slung over one shoulder. She stopped short when she saw him, her curious eyes narrowing. "You again," she said flatly. William smiled faintly, unsure of himself for the first time in years. "Yeah, me again. I wanted to thank you properly." "I told you," she said, crossing her arms. I don't want your money." He chuckled softly. "I know. You made that very clear. But maybe I could just walk you to school." She hesitated, studying him. Something in his tone, gentle, almost pleading, softened her suspicion. Finally, she shrugged. "It's your gas." As they walked, William stole glances at her. The way she tilted her head when she spoke, the stubborn set of her jaw. It was like looking back in time at Mariah. But then Lena grinned at something, and his heart clenched. That smile, it was his. "Lena," he said carefully, "your mama, she ever tell you about your dad?" Her step slowed. She looked at the ground, then back up at him. "No," she said quietly. "Mama says he wasn't ready to be a father. That's all." The words stabbed him deeper than any boardroom betrayal ever could. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a sharp voice rang out from behind. "Lena!" They both turned. Mariah was marching toward them, her eyes blazing. Mariah's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Lena stiffened, guilt flashing across her young face, while William turned slowly, already bracing for storm. "Get away from her!" Mariah snapped, striding up the sidewalk. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with fury. She placed herself between Lena and William, shielding her daughter as though he were some predator. "Mariah, please," William said, his voice low, almost desperate. "I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to—" "To what?" she interrupted bitterly. "To stroll back into our lives like nothing happened? To confuse her? You don't get to do that, William. Not after the choices you made." Lena looked between them, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Mama, you know him," she whispered. Mariah's chest rose and fell, her silence stretching heavy between them. "Finally," she sighed, her voice softening for her daughter's sake. "Yes, baby, I know him." She glanced at William, her eyes sharp. Too well. William swallowed hard. Lena deserves the truth. Mariah turned on him, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "The truth? You left, William. You walked away when we needed you most. And now you think you can just claim her because you happen to drive down the wrong street." Her words hit like stones, each one sinking deeper into his chest. He remembered the night he had left, the arguments with his father, the fear of losing his inheritance if he stayed with Mariah. He had told himself it was for the best, that Mariah was strong enough, that she would move on. But seeing Lena now, hearing the quiet hurt in Mariah's voice, he knew those excuses were nothing but cowardice. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I should have fought for you. For her. But please don't shut me out now." Lena's wide eyes darted between them, sensing the weight of something too big for her age. She tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, what's going on? Who is he?" Mariah knelt, cupping her daughter's face with trembling hands. "He's someone from before, baby. Someone who doesn't matter now." William's throat tightened. "Mariah, don't—" "She has the right to know who I am." But before he could say more, Mariah's hand shot up, silencing him with a look. Her eyes were wet, her voice raw. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare ruin the little peace we've managed to build." The street was quiet, save for Lena's shallow breathing. William felt the world closing in. He had conquered industries, bought companies, broken rivals, but in front of this woman and her child, he was powerless. "Please," he whispered, his voice cracking, "just give me a chance." Mariah's jaw clenched, her body trembling with conflict. For the first time, William thought he saw not just anger in her eyes, but fear. Mariah's silence felt heavier than any words she could have spoken. William stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching the war play out across her face. Anger, fear, and something deeper she was trying hard to bury. Lena shifted uncomfortably between them, tugging at her backpack straps, sensing the tension even if she didn't fully understand it. Finally, Mariah straightened, her voice sharp though it wavered at the edges. "Go home, William. Whatever you think you can fix, it's too late." But William shook his head. "It's never too late, Mariah. Don't say that. She deserves to know the truth. She deserves her father." His voice cracked on the word father, surprising even himself. Mariah flinched, pain flickering across her eyes. She turned to guide Lena back toward the house, but the girl pulled away. "Mama, stop," Lena said, her small voice trembling. "I want to know." Mariah froze. Lena stepped closer to William, her wide eyes searching his face. Are you my dad?" The world seemed to pause. William's breath caught in his chest, his throat dry. He nodded slowly, tears stinging his eyes. "Yes, Lena, I am." The girl's lips parted in shock. She looked at her mother, then back at William. For a long moment, she just stared at him, as though trying to decide if the word dad fit the stranger in a fancy shirt with sad eyes. Mariah wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Lena, don't." But Lena shook her head. "Why didn't you come before? Why didn't you want us?" The questions tumbled out, raw and sharp. William's chest ached. He crouched down so he was eye level with her. "It's not that I didn't want you. I was afraid. I made mistakes. Big ones. But if you let me, I want to make it right now. I want to know you. If you'll let me." Tears filled Lena's eyes. She hugged her backpack tighter, torn between anger and longing. A part of her wanted to run back into her mother's arms. Another part, the one that had always wondered why she never had a dad at school events or birthday parties, wanted to believe him. Mariah looked away, her shoulders shaking. She whispered, almost to herself, "You don't get to walk in after 12 years and take her heart, William. You don't get to break her like you broke me." William's own eyes filled. "I'm not leaving this time. I swear it. Not unless she asks me to." For the first time, Mariah didn't fire back. She just stood there, trembling, staring at him with a storm of emotions too tangled to name. And Lena, standing between them, felt the weight of a choice she never thought she'd have to make. The silence lingered, broken only by the distant bark of a dog and the faint chatter of children playing down the block. Lena wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, staring at William as though trying to measure the truth in his trembling voice. Mariah finally let out a shaky breath. "Lena, go inside for a moment." The girl hesitated, torn, but obeyed. She disappeared into the house, leaving the door cracked just enough to eavesdrop. William and Mariah stood alone on the worn sidewalk, the ghosts of their past pressing in on them. "Why now?" Mariah asked, her voice raw. "You had every chance to fight for us. Every chance to choose love over money. And you didn't. Do you know how many nights I stayed awake, hating you, praying you'd show up? Do you know what it's like to raise a child who keeps asking why her father never came?" William's chest tightened, shame burning hot through him. "I do know, because I've been asking myself every day why I didn't come back. I let fear and pride control me. But seeing her, Mariah, seeing our daughter, I can't run anymore." Mariah's arms folded across her chest, but her eyes betrayed the tears she tried to hide. "I don't trust you. I don't blame you," he said softly. "But let me earn it. Not for me, for her. She deserves to know her father isn't just some man who vanished. She deserves to see I'm here now." The door creaked open again. Lena stepped back onto the porch, her small face determined. "Mama, I want to know him." Her voice wavered but carried more strength than her years. "I've always wanted a dad. And if he's really him, then I want to try." Mariah looked at her daughter, then at William. Her walls, built over 12 years of pain, began to crack. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she warned, her voice sharp but breaking. William stepped closer, his eyes locked on Lena's. "I promise," he said, his voice steady despite the tears running down his face. "I'm not leaving again." For the first time, Lena smiled faintly through her tears. She reached out hesitantly and slipped her small hand into his. The touch shattered something inside him, guilt, regret, loneliness, and replaced it with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Mariah watched, torn between fear and hope. She whispered, almost to herself, "God, help us if you fail her." William squeezed Lena's hand gently, meeting Mariah's gaze with quiet determination. "I won't." And for the first time in a long time, William Carrington, the man who thought he had everything, realized he had only just begun to find what truly mattered. Sparkle's the end.